Hello everyone and welcome to .NET Core Central, the website for everything .NET Core. Last time I did the unit testing and I used XUnit and mock to see how unit testing can be done with .NET Core. So here I have used mock for mocking various components and XUnit as the assert framework for doing the unit testing. Today I'm going to start with integration testing of the ASP.NET Core Web API. For that also I'm going to use XUnit. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create an integration test project in the same solution. So I'm going to add a new project, and here I'm going to select the XUnit test project and I'm going to name it as time management.integration test. I'm going to click OK. After the project is created, I'm going to add a NuGet package called Microsoft.ASP.NET-Core.TestHost. TestHost is a testing infrastructure provided by ASP.NET Core itself. It is used for doing integration test. So here I would show how TestHost would be used to create a test server, and then we'll instantiate a client out of it, and that will be used for our testing purposes. So first of all, let me add the NuGet package. ASP.NET Core.TestHost, and here is the test host. So I'm going to click on install. I'm going to select accept, and the package is installed. After the package is installed, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new class where I'm going to configure the test host. So I'm going to name this class as test client provider, test client provider, and this is going to give us a context to the test client. So after I add this class, I make it as public, and I'm going to create a constructor, and in the constructor of the class, what I'm going to do is first I'm going to create an instance of the test server, server equal to new test server, and I'm going to add the namespace. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide an instance of a new web host builder. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call the use startup method on it, and I'm going to pass the startup function from the time management.service, because that's the startup we are going to use. And for that, here in the integration test, what I have to do is I have to add a reference to the service class, and once I do that, I get it. I get the startup, and then after that I'm going to create the client. So I'm going to do server dot create client, and I'm going to keep this client as a public property. So first I'll do public HTTP client, and then here I'll have get and private set. Let me add the namespace, and then here I'm just going to say client equal to create client. So this will give me essentially the infrastructure I need to start the integration testing. Now I'll go back to my unit test class, and I'm going to rename it as employee API integration test, because that is what it is essentially. So now first test I am going to do is I am going to test the get method. So test get all, it's the get all method. So here for testing the get method I would need an instance of the HTTP client. So for that what I'm going to do is first I'm going to create a client object, and the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to create a new test client provider dot client. Now we can move this whole creation of test client provider at the constructor and access it, but for the time being I'm just going to keep it here. So after we create the client, now we are ready to do the integration test. So response equal to client dot get. So if it is returning async, we have to have an await here, and I'm going to pass the URL of the API. So it's going to be /API/employee. And since I'm calling an async method, I also have to change this to async. So I have to say async task care all, and here, so here I have to add the reference to system.threading.text. So now I get the response. Next thing I have to make sure that the response is getting a success status code. So I'll do response dot ensure success status code. This will ensure that it's a success. Now we have to check if the status code is okay or not. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do assert dot equal, and I'm going to say HTTP status code, and let me add the namespace of system.net, and then I'll say dot OK is what the response dot status code is. And now I'm going to run this test. I'm going to go to test, run all tests. So here we go, the integration test is successful. So we are getting a status code of OK. Now just to make sure that it is working as expected, I'm going to change it to a not found and run this test, and we should see a test failure here. Yep. So expected is not found, but actual is okay. I'm going to change it back to okay, so that we are back to green. And yes, you can see we are back to green now. Now couple of things I'm going to change here for better coding. The test server actually has an implementation of iDisposal. So for that, the change that I'm going to do is I'm going to declare at the class level itself, I'm going to declare the test server. So I'll have private test server, and I'm going to get rid of these because we don't need this. And here what I'm going to do is First thing is I'm going to declare iDisposable. iDisposable, add the namespace as, and then implement the interface. And here in the dispose method, what I'm going to do is, if server is not null, then server dot dispose, and similarly if client is not null, then dispose of the client as well. And in my test here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the implementation a little bit, and I'm going to say using client, and I'm going to put this entire block, and I'm going to put this entire block inside the using statement to rerun. And we are back again, we are still a success. Now another thing I want to touch upon here is, for the testing as such, for the assert part of the testing, what we can do is we can use another NuGet package for the Fluent API. So instead of using standard assert dot, we can use syntax like should. For that, what I have to do is I have to add another NuGet package. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to add the NuGet package FluentAssertion. So I'm going to go to manage NuGet package, and here I'm going to say FluentAssertions. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to check. Yeah, it supports .NET Standard. So I should be able to use it. So it is installed. Now I'm going to go back to my test, and here instead of these, what I can do is response dot status code dot should, and here I'll get the hint, and here I get the hint to add FluentAssertion. So I'm going to add it, and then I'm going to say dot b http status code dot ok, and I'm going to get rid of this assert statement because the should is going to essentially do the same thing, and I'm going to rerun the test, and the test is completed, and we can see it's a success. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try out testing a post method. So if you see in the employee controller, we have get, which is going to return all employees, and the get, which will return an employee by ID, we don't have an implementation for that yet. And then we have post, put, and delete. So I'm going to try out a post. I want to do an integration test of the post. For that, let me go back to my integration test, and let's create another function. Probably assign task test post. Put that, and I'm going to put the attribute fact so that it's test discoverable. And then here I'm going to do the same thing. I'll first have to create a instance of the test client, so I'll just go ahead and do this, just copying and pasting. And here instead of get, I'll have to do post. So here I have to pass an HTTP content. So what I can do is I can do a new of string content. The string content would expect a string. So here what I'll do is I can create an employee and convert that into a JSON string, right? Because it takes what is the encoding as well as the media type. So what I can do is new of employee. So for that I need a couple of things. First of all, I have to add a reference to my data which has the employee object, and next thing also I have to add the NuGet package of newtonsoft.json. I'm going to go to manage NuGet package, and I'm going to see JSON. You know what, if I'm going to install the newtonsoft.json. It's installed successfully. So let me go back to my project, and here now I can add reference to the time management of data, create a new employee, provide the address as test, first name is equal to John, last name is equal to Mac, and then cell phone equal to home phone equal to so I have provided all the necessary field. Okay, so here I go, and then what I have to do is, since it's a text string, I'll just put it in the line. I'll say JSON convert dot add serialize object. I'm going to pass it, and I'm going to see, so I pass the JSON, and then let me do this one. I'm going to the new line, and then the next one I want is what is the then I'm going to pass the encoding to say encoding, and you can see here list system.text encoding dot utf8, and then the media type is application/JSON. So once I have that, now I can test the same thing and I can check if the status code is okay. So I'm going to run this. I have to go back and I'll say run test, and we can see here this test is also completed. Now next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into database and see if we have a new record or not. So I'm going to do a select star from employee. I'm going to run this, and here we go, we get the John Mac test and this data being inserted. So it looks like my integration test is successful. So this is what I had for today. I want to do the integration test for both get and post, and I also use the Fluent assertion to use a Fluent API here for the testing purposes, and we can see how easy it becomes to use the testing infrastructure that ASP.NET Web API provides, which essentially helps us do the integration testing. Thanks so much for watching this video, and please don't forget to subscribe my channel.